Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dandies, a podcast where each episode, two friends share a recommendation with one another. We talk about what we liked, what we would change, and try not to judge each other too much over our bad tastes. This week, we examine our dreams. Ooh. Yeah, that's what I got.
I don't get that reference. Are you like a ghost?
More just like the ethereal, surreal, understandableness of the dreams of human beings. You dream, right?
I'm a robot. I don't dream.
Yeah.
I also don't. I just don't sleep.
You should probably sleep. That might be something that kind of is contributing to a lower quality of life.
Well, see, the more I sleep, that's the less time for video games I have. And you can see where the problem is there, right?
Yeah, Dark Souls isn't going to play itself.
Nope. New game plus 5 is not going to happen on its own.
Oh, God. I have to be honest. I've never been one for replaying video games. And I'm kind of like that with a lot of stuff. I play it once. I enjoy it. I set it aside. I enjoyed that experience. I'm glad I got to play it. But there's so much else out in the world that I just don't feel like I have time to go back and do the things or rewatch things that I've done before. That's only for things that have made like a momentous impact on my life. So that's like your Metal Gear, your Wodakoi, but like it's very rarefied air to get to that point with me.
Yeah, I'm the same way actually. Like Dark Souls and Dark Souls and Metal Gear and maybe the Mass Effect trilogy, which we're getting a remaster of. I think those are probably the only things that I replay. Dark Souls lately is just because it's just a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I know I'm gonna love it. It's like it's easy for me to access, and I know it's gonna be like really satisfying. So that's why I'm in it right now.
I do have to say that I do listen to every episode that we create here for Disc Dandies. So, of course, I am here for the recording of the episode. But once you edit it and you put it out, I do listen to it 10 times. I'm trying to get our numbers up, man. I'm doing everything I can.
I appreciate your contributions. If I look at the the retention rate, I can see these dips every time that I start speaking. Would you be able to comment on that?
I have nothing to say about that.
I was gonna say, actually, my question for this week is, what are you doing for Valentine's Day with your girlfriend?
Ooh, this is a great question. Oh, actually, I have a great story about this. My girlfriend has absolutely broke me. I have never really been one to be a gift giver. That's not my love language, so to speak. And when it comes to gift giving holidays, I'll indulge. I'll put thought into it and come up with a good gift to give my loved ones. But it was never really anything I was like super invested in. It's just kind of not how my mind works. So when it comes to actually giving the gifts, I don't have any desire to like have them open it early. If it's like Christmas gifts or birthday gifts, I'm totally fine with it just sitting and just waiting until the day. But then I started dating my girlfriend, and she is absolutely not that way. She loves gifts, and she loves getting gifts early. So ever since I started dating her, we have increasingly widened the gap between the actual holiday and when we actually do gift giving. And this year has been no exception. I have already given her Valentine's Day gift because she broke me. She got me to the point where I cannot wait to give her presents. So I bought her, you may have seen these on the internet before. It's a good size. I would call it tiny, but it's not that tiny. It's a stained glass cat lamp. So it looks like a cat. It's molded like a cat. It has a little bobblehead, and it's a lamp, so you can turn it on, and it illuminates from the inside. And the best part is that the stained glass is both like a milky white and orange, which matches the color of her cat. So needless to say, I knocked it out of the park with my gift for Valentine's Day this year.
What I am doing for Valentine's Day is a little bit of backstory for Tristan, my girlfriend. She is someone who, whenever is focused on something, forgets to do other important things like eating. And whenever she is off work, she feels the need to stress eat or, catch back up. Yeah. So she'll be snacking and stuff like that until it's dinner, or like up until it's dinner time, or maybe after dinner time, whenever, kids are laying down and stuff and we're watching TV, she wants some chips or something sweet.
Very healthy coping mechanisms, I have to say.
Yeah, and instead of helping her have a better eating schedule and helping her develop a better routine and making sure that she remembers eating throughout the day, I'm instead going to enable her, and I'm going to make her a raspberry chocolate tart. Just have that available to her for her to munch on in the evening. That's going to be probably made Valentine's Day. I don't know. It just depends. But yeah, that's her favorite flavor combination, and I think that's what I'm going to be doing.
I think that's really great. Are you going to consult our boy Chocolate Cacao and help in creating this wonderful confectionery?
I'm actually going to be consulting another one of our faves, Miss Mary Berry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. From Great British Bake Off. Yeah, I know her.
Yeah, we pulled up her recipe book, or really I looked it up online, but yeah, and I'm going to be making that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I definitely want to see pictures of it once it's done, and I look forward to hearing about her reaction. I'm sure that'll be a great gift.
It'll probably be, oh my God, this is not good. Because I don't cook very often.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I have a lot of faith in you. And actually, I was talking about this with my girlfriend recently because she's a big baker and it's something that she's super into. She makes really great cookies and breads, stuff like that. For my understanding of baking, it really is just exactly following the very specific directions and doing very specific things in a very specific order. It seems like the fundamentals of baking are something that would be really easy to grok to understand for turbo nerds like us who are really good at understanding systems and doing things in a very correct logical order. So I have a lot of faith in you.
Well, see, where this backfires on you, Will, is that we are big nerdy boys that are good at following directions. But what backfires here is that we are also American, and I am following British baking instructions, which use weight instead of cups, or whatever system our bakers use here in the U.S. So this is going to be a first for me.
Do you know what a gram is?
It's like a little bag of weed. Is that right?
Okay, never mind. I have no faith in you in this. But anyway, good luck with that. And speaking of Valentine's Day, would you want to talk about something that is completely depressing and not fun at all?
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully veers into themes of suicide, I hope.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of our topic for this episode. My exhortation, which was Yume Nikki.
Sounds good to me. Let's talk about it.
So, Yume Nikki is a side-scrolling 2D exploration game. And the title translates to, it's a Japanese title. It translates to Dream Diary. And that's very appropriate once you know what this game actually is. It was developed by a very reclusive and anonymous Japanese indie game developer named Kikiyama. And this game was originally developed using the RPG Maker 3 engine. The original version of this was released in 2004, and occasional updates would be posted, with the latest being posted in 2007. And this game it's pretty well known, considering what it actually is. It gained cult classic status through forums such as in the Japanese 2 channel, and then 4chan here on this side of the ocean. And it's a very well known game, cult classic. It's been very influential on indie game development since it first came out. And it was really hard to play for a while because with it being based on a Japanese version of RPG Maker, your machine actually had to have a Japanese system locale set on it, or all your stuff set to that. But it's now easier to play than ever because the game was ported to Steam at the beginning of 2018. So now it has very wide availability. And this game is very weird. It's very surreal. It's you kind of just walk around and do exploration and see some really weird stuff. So I'm curious, Jordan, what was your impression of this game when you first picked it up?
Well, going in, I had never heard of the game before, so I had no idea what to expect, I guess, based outside of what your original exhortation blurb was about it. Whenever I first started playing it, I did a really dumb thing and probably spent about 15 minutes in her bedroom flipping between the dream and the real world and playing the little game on her TV.
Oh, yeah.
And just I was like, where am I supposed to go? Because at one point when in the real world, I tried opening up her door and it said it was locked. And I would go back into the dream and didn't even try opening the door because I was like, well, it said it was locked in the real world. I just didn't even think to. After about 15 minutes had passed, I just randomly walked over and pressed it and actually got to start playing the game, and that was nice.
That's an interesting story because we're gonna talk about that a little bit. So, I'm curious because this game is a lot deeper than it looks on the surface. There's a lot of hidden areas and things that you can do. So in your playthrough, about how far did you get? How much of the game do you feel that you've seen?
I ended up looking up a guide whenever I felt like I had seen a good majority of it, but I'd gotten stuck. I got to what I found was 21 out of 25 of what are, I guess we'll just call them items from now until we talk more about the game's mechanics. But in the game, they're called effects. I found 21 of them and just had a really difficult time finding the last few. And I was like, I really want to see what the rest of this game has to offer, and I want to make sure that I get a chance to see it. So I'm close enough, so I just went ahead and started looking up how to progress the rest of the way. So I did see everything as far as I know.
Wow, I was not expecting you to get that far into it. I think in my playthrough, that I've done, which playing the game, I started a new playthrough when I did my exhortation, and I believe I got up to 20 effects before stopping because it was time to record the episode. Yeah, I was not expecting you to get that far. You've seen, if you have 20 effects, you've seen almost all of the game. There might be a few things that you haven't. How far did it take you before you kind of gave up and decided to look up what you were supposed to be doing?
It was, like I said, whenever I was around 20, 21 effects, I was like, I need help because I can't figure out where the rest of these are. Or I couldn't really figure out what I was supposed to do once I totally forgot what it told me at the beginning of the game, which is that you're supposed to drop them all by pressing 5 in the room with the doors. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And because I was like, I think I found mostly everything. So yeah, I just needed to pay a little bit more attention and have a better memory, I guess.
Dude, no. That is incredible that you got that far without a guide. That's insane. I'm very impressed with what you managed to accomplish there. I got 2 effects before I gave up and started looking up the guide because it was so frustrating to figure out what you were supposed to be doing. But just real quick before we kind of get into what the story and the gameplay is, overall, did you like this game or did you find it super frustrating? All right, well, with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into kind of what the actual story as it is of this game is.
Sure, sounds good to me.
Yeah, so in this game, you play as a named character, which you see in the menu, named Madotsuki, which we can assume is a Japanese woman who lives alone in a very tiny apartment. It's one room with a balcony. And the game starts with her in her tiny apartment with not a lot that you can do. You can't leave the room. She shakes her head very adamantly if you try to leave the room via the front door. You can't leave. Can't leave the apartment. There is a little game console there and has a really cool mini game you can play. And you can go out onto the balcony and kind of see different times of day in the sky, but there really isn't anything to do. There's a desk which serves as the save mechanism for the game, and is the titular dream diary that she writes down to save. But the only really thing that you can do to progress the game is to get into bed, where she falls asleep, and then you go into the dream world, and that's where the bulk of the game happens. She wakes up in a slightly different version of her apartment out on the balcony, and you can tell that it's a little different because the sky behind her building will have a bit more of an eerie quality to it. And you go into her room, the desk, the bed, the TV's all there, the game console's gone, and maybe one or two other things are done, but you can actually leave the apartment. And once you do, you go into a very weird and surreal dream world. You'll walk into a room that has a very weird, like Aztec, kind of Mesoamerican themed shifting background, and a room of 12 doors. And each of these doors goes into a different dream world, that are very different from each other. One is very neon themed. One is a weird forest. One is basically just blocks on a black background. There's all sorts of these different surreal worlds that she can go into and explore. And most of these will actually kind of loop within each other, and it's very easy to get lost and not know how you're supposed to continue or where the doors are to go to different things. And that's the bulk of the game, is walking around and exploring these very weird, surreal dream worlds that this woman is having.
We're technically talking about the story here, but there really isn't much story to speak of. It's more of a vibes game. There are some things you can draw. There are some conclusions you can draw from like what you're seeing, the different doors you enter into. I'm sure, I haven't looked at a bunch of interpretations for the dreams themselves, but this game is largely working, asking you to do the work to put things together. It's not actually giving you exposition.
Yeah, absolutely none of that. Almost everything that you can glean about what's happening in her mind, subconscious, you are just interpreting from what you're seeing. And even that's very difficult because a lot of what you see is just so weird, surreal, makes no sense that, there are all sorts of interpretations that you could make. However, there are things that you can do, and you kind of get one clue as to what you're supposed to be doing, is that you're told that there are effects in the dream world, which they are called. Once you find them, they literally just change your appearance, and then some of them kind of have practical uses that you're not told. You actually have to find out, but there are things that you can do with these effects. And you'll find these just by interacting with strange objects that you find in the world. The very first one that I found was the frog effect. If you go into the forest, dream world, and you find a frog, you can interact with a frog and you gain the frog effect, which, if you don't know what it actually does, it seems to only turn you into a frog. But as you play and you explore, or you just look it up, you can find out that the frog actually does have a practical use. It actually increases your speed when you're walking through areas that are considered to be water or wet. But the game doesn't tell you that. You actually have to find that out yourself. There are, I think it's 24, 25, somewhere around there, different effects you can find. But the game also doesn't tell you that. All it says is there are effects that you can find, and then you can equip the effects in your menu. So that's the one thing that you're told that you're supposed to do. And again, I'm very impressed that you were able to find whatever you said, 2021, without a guide. Like I said, I got like 2, I think, before I had to look up and see what I was doing. For me, it was really easy for me to get lost in these dream worlds because, like I said before, they loop so much that it's so easy to just like lose the door and then not be able to figure out how to actually get out of the world or even find the thing that's inside the world that you're trying to find.
My method going through the game was mainly just like coming up to something I hadn't really like interacted with too much, and then literally cycling through all of the effects I had accrued up to that point and trying stuff, which like once you've done it a few times can be a little arduous, but it's something that like one of the things I'll say about this game is that there isn't a lot to interact with that unless you have an effect on. It's largely a lot of just like kind of wandering, and even after you've found effects and start using them, there are still things in the environments that you just don't interact with. They're more there for aesthetic purposes. So it's one of those things where it's like I think it becomes more obvious as you play what things you can and can't interact with.
Right. Things that do stuff when you interact with them do clearly look different. Not in a like they're being highlighted, but just compared to everything else that's in the world, you can tell this is important. You know, you should pay attention to this a little bit. Yeah, like you said before, it was 100. You know, you're 100% right. This is really more of a vibes game. Go around, explore, get lost, enjoy the surrealism of what you're seeing.
Yeah, and as long as we're talking about like first effects that we found, I actually found the hat and scarf first, which I actually didn't figure out what it did for a little bit. I think that's the one that allows you to jump up on top of blocks or something like that. And there's some other like weird things that I read about that it does as well, like in terms of other effects reacting weird to it. But that was the first one I found.
Right. The game doesn't tell you that kind of stuff. I think that almost all the effects, I played on computer. It is a game for computer. I did eventually find out on my own that pressing the number 1 button would activate some sort of effect, or would activate some sort of thing that the effect could do. But as far as I know, I don't think the game ever tells you that there's a button that does a unique thing with each effect. I'm pretty sure I had to figure that one out by myself.
I mainly just got to a point where I was just like, okay, I need to start experimenting with these things because they're obvious. They just can't be being left around here for nothing. Because I just figured that there was some kind of gameplay usage for them, and like I started by like going to different locations with the effect equipped and seeing if things reacted that way. And then I went to like, okay, I'm just gonna start pressing buttons. You know what I mean? But
yeah, for sure. But that seems to be intentional, from what we know about this game. And again, the person who made this, or team, we actually don't even know if it's just one person. But they have been very sporadic about what they've said publicly about the game, and that does seem to be the point, is to go into this game and not know what you're supposed to do and just explore and try things out and just be kind of overwhelmed by the world that you find yourself in.
So overwhelmed, or is frustration, do you think, a feeling that you're supposed to feel in it, do you think?
Well, I think that's actually a great segue to, wanting to talk about just the actual pure gameplay of this. We recently talked about What Remains of Edith Finch, and we both really liked that game, felt like it did a lot of interesting narrative things when the only gameplay loop that you had was walking around and interacting with stuff. So, I would definitely say we talked about that being considered a walking simulator, and whether that was an appropriate way to describe it, or whether walking simulator was whether it was a good thing that walking simulator was being used as a derogatory term to speak about games like this. I do think that the term walking simulator really does apply to this game here, because that is what you do. You walk around and you explore the world, and you can occasionally interact with stuff. Now, that's my question, is that a good way for this game to tell whatever narrative that it's trying to tell. And before just asking this very open-ended question, I'll go ahead and answer it myself. I did find myself very frustrated by the fact that I didn't know what to do. It wasn't that I was opposed to like hitting a wall and not knowing what to do and like having to figure it out, but I did feel that I was not given the correct tools to figure out how to get past the wall. That like I said, I do think that that's intentional, but I do have to kind of question whether that makes it's definitely a good artistic choice, but is it a good gameplay choice? And I kind of think no.
I think for this game, with the amount of dead air and resetting that you have to do, whenever I say dead air, I mean a lot of time where you're actually just like walking where there is just like completely uninteractive space, that I think that it is working against it to be as, how do I say, I'm trying not to use negative terms because I do have a lot of positive feelings about this game, but I think that there is just a little bit too much left to interpretation in terms of player agency and guidance. I think that I think they needed to condense it more. I think some of the areas are way too large for the things that you can interact with in them. It almost seems like they wanted to make sure the vibe stuck and that you felt a little lost going through these environments. But I also think that it had the unintentional side effect of like creating this like frustration where you're just like, I know what I'm looking for, but this place is so nebulous that I can't find the thing that I'm looking for now. For instance, I sent you a picture while I was playing, and I was in just total blackness. And I was in an area where there were like these these little blocks, like kind of spread like very wide throughout, and they were your landmarks to kind of to know where you were at. And by the time I pieced out about what I was supposed to be doing, because I had seen something unique, and I was like, well, I'll come back to this later, and I didn't see any more of it, and I was like, okay, I need to go back and find that thing. So I start walking around looking for it again. I could not find any more of the blocks around the environment to like kind of reorient myself, and I was just in constant black, walking in every direction, and I could not figure a way out of it. That was very, very frustrating, and also like I ended up hitting 9, which is, the pinch yourself button, so you wake yourself up and come back to the real world, and having to do that and then go back into the doors and then find that location again was just not very gratifying.
Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation I have a lot with my co-host on the Gutshot podcast, where we talk about Magic the Gathering, Frederick. He is a lot like you, where he thinks a lot about game design, and he has very pointed opinions about how what good game design is, and how designers can create more fun game gameplay moments. I think that you two would have a really great conversation about this. I feel almost like kind of on the opposite end of how he feels about these things. He is very, let me say it this way. I am very much in the camp that artistic expression is more like, I value artistic expression in games more than kind of min-maxing what makes a good game. The frustration that we're feeling when we play Yume Nikki seems very intentional. The person who made this game very much wants us to not know what to do, wants us to be hitting these blank walls with no instruction on what to do, because I think it's very clear they're trying to get an artistic point across. And I think they do that very well, as dense and kind of hard to understand as that might be. It's with us being kind of super gamers, how we're very much into getting into these systems and like min-maxing things, figuring out like what's better and what's not. How do I play this in the most efficient way possible? I don't think that this is a game that you're supposed to be approaching that way. How we are like, the point of this game is for us to find all the effects. It might even be better to approach this game not really even trying to beat it, because that doesn't really even seem to be the point. There's an end point because there kind of has to be an end point with games, but like do you actually have to reach that for this to be a good game? I'm inclined to say no. Fred, as I brought up, he definitely feels the other way. I think he would hate this game if he ever tried to play it. But we have this conversation a lot, kind of good gameplay versus artistic expression. And I think that this is a good example of a game that just really veers towards being a piece of art at the expense of gameplay. Now, whether that's a good thing or not really depends on the player that's playing. But I guess that's all I have to say about that. That was a bit of an essay.
I think I do want to respond to that, though. I think I'm somewhere in the middle where I can see that this is intentional and that this isn't meant to be I got all the achievos type game. I don't even think there are achievements for this game, if I'm not mistaken. But it's one of those things where it's like, I think that artistic intent is very important. I play, I think, a good number of games that would be considered difficult or obtuse or something like that. But I think that there is a point where you have to consider whether or not what it's saying is worth the frustration you're experiencing. Because ultimately what's going to happen, whether or not you're achieving your artistic goal, it's whether or not you connect with people. And you have to, and you need those people to understand your message. And that doesn't necessarily mean you spell things out, but you have to design things in such a way that they can have, that they don't feel punished for engaging with your art, And I feel like this is a game that, from where our conversation is going to go soon, I do think that it's worth playing through all the way to see like the broad strokes of what it is trying to say. I just think that the moment to moment gameplay maybe could have been designed in such I think they could have gotten the same message across without depending so much on the nebulous void walking. I do think that it veers a little bit too much into the territory of not just unfun, but kind of unapproachable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually do mostly agree with what you're saying. This is where we get super philosophical. Does art have to be understandable?
I think it needs to be interpretable. I think is like the broader thing. Like if you make art and only you connect with that thing, which I don't think is possible. I think that most people will react to things when they see things, whether or not they realize it or not. It could be small or large. But I do think that there needs to be some amount of interpretation, and that requires viewer or your audience's engagement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Art is made by humans and it's consumed by humans. So yeah, I definitely agree. Something that's made by a human is going to be mostly interpretable by humans. I guess I kind of fall on the other end of this, where I'm much more willing to give a leeway to artists to say what they want to say. I guess I'm a little too big brained for my own good here, and I'm just like, if you're an artist and you want to say something, anything you say is valid, and I don't have the right to say whether this is correct or good artistic expression. Now that makes sense for like movies and like paintings, art, stuff like that, but video games kind of have that extra thing where you do have to actually play the game. So there is a good balance between artistic expression and engaging gameplay, but I'm much more willing to give a lot of leeway to artists to break that mold.
Yeah, I think that's where art criticism comes into play. That's why people like Roger Ebert existed, rest in peace. Is like, it's one of those things where you have people who make a career out of telling you whether or not this art is engageable. And I do think that that's important for art. If you are trying to make a career as an artist, or you're trying to put something out for an audience to enjoy, people generally want to know if this thing's going to be worth their time. And the answer can be yes, but caveat. You know what I mean? Like, just because something has drawbacks or it can be criticized doesn't mean it isn't good art. Because I think that what this game is trying to say, it's effective in saying it, but it doesn't come without conceits that are frustrating. And whether or not it's intentional, some people are going to bounce off of that. And I think that's a neg regardless of whether or not it was intentional. Like it's something that's largely thrown at, I mean, this is going to come up. I know we're probably going to be touching on it here in a second, or likely are looking at our notes, but like Dark Souls, that's why you can't recommend that game to everybody. It's not a wholly like mainstream approachable piece of art. It has its drawbacks, which are like there are only a certain sect of people that are going to be able to put up with some of its bullshit. So
yeah, and that's a good way.
And I think it's the same thing with Yume Nikki. It's like it's saying something of value, and that's good. But there are things that we can do better, and I do think that there are things that this game could do better. And that's my opinion. I can't go up to this developer and tell them that they should do better, because this could be exactly what they wanted and they achieved their vision. It's just from the perspective of like, hey, if you want people to enjoy this more, you should probably consider this,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will not speak for you, Jordan, but just for our listeners, the dandy dogs out there, I will say I am a very, very amateur art criticizer. I don't have any formal training or degrees or anything like that. It is 100% amateur. So don't expect me to have like super like reasoned and informed philosophical takes on art criticism. I just am calling it the best that I see it.
Will, I hate to break it to you, man. This whole podcast has been that from the beginning.
Oh no. Maybe you can cut this out if you don't want to admit to it, but our working title when we first started this podcast was Amateur Inspection, which I think is a very apt description of what we're doing right now.
I mean, I think that's exactly it. We have refrained from calling ourselves a review podcast where like we're reviewing each other's interests. It's definitely been analytical in nature, regardless of the goofy stuff that we sometimes delve into. I think that this is we're critiquing things. That's if you really want to boil us down to our base ingredients, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I for my official review of this game, I give Yume Nikki 10 mid-afternoon naps, created out of depression out of 10.
Yeah, on that note, I did like this. I don't think that they were trying to put me to sleep with this game. I don't think that was intentional. There were areas where I was playing at about like 9:30 p.m. I was becoming a sleepy boy. There's some dead sections in this game, Will.
Yeah, fair enough. But to go back to what you were saying, I did want to mention this. I'm really glad that we actually took the time to play Dark Souls together a little bit more before we had this discussion we're having now. You might remember, and I'll just say this for the audience. I wasn't tilted. I wasn't like frustrated or anything, but I did ask you a question. I said, because you were telling me about mechanics of the game that are not, or to my knowledge, not fully explained in the documentation of the game, of Dark Souls. So I remember asking you, do the creators of this game expect people to be able to get through it and beat it without having any prior knowledge of the kind of more hidden aspects, mechanics of the game? And as I was replaying Yume Nikki after that conversation, I kept thinking about that, because a lot of that kind of is happening here as well. So I'm really glad that we have that conversation. And I do think that it's not really, and I really don't think that's intended for you to be able to reach the end of this game with zero knowledge of what's going on with Yume Nikki.
I definitely reached a point. I don't think Dark Souls is that game, for the record. Like, I do think, because like I beat the game without turning to the internet, and I know others have as well. I don't think it's a small percentage either, because there is like a critical path that you can just kind of figure out as you go. You may not be doing it as efficiently or like min-maxy as you should be, but I mean, it's possible for sure. Yume Nikki, I feel like there are just interactions that are just like they're very specific, and I definitely could not have achieved the ending without turning to the internet for some of that stuff.
Sure. I guess the last thing I want to say about the gameplay, and we've already touched on this, but one thing that I think this game really excels at, and I think is like one of the main points that the creator was trying to get across, this does a great job of being a very bewildering experience for anybody coming in. And I really think that's what they were trying to go for. And that makes sense. When we think about dreams, like what goes on in our subconscious when we're asleep, we do say and experience some really crazy stuff. I'm sure you've probably had some crazy dreams before, right?
Pants are always off at them, yes.
Yeah, and I think that especially with this game being an exploration of what happens in your subconscious while you're dreaming, and the implications of that, this does that very well. If the creator wanted you to go into this completely blind, play it for a little bit and be, I am so confused, this is so weird, I have no idea what's going on, they did a great job of doing that.
Yeah, they did. I guess I've been criticizing it up to this point, but I will say I do like games that take this approach, which is very much hands off, very limited, maybe not to this extent, but limited instruction, and kind of allow you to just kind of figure things out. That to me is a good gameplay experience. I love limited interaction from the developers in terms of instruction, and I like just being able to explore. And I think some of my favorite games take that approach, and I did respect that about a lot of this game. Sure,
yeah. Well, since we're kind of done with the gameplay, would you want to talk about our personal interpretations of the things that we saw in the game and what we think the developer might be trying to say about our main character in this game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where the game is the most successful, because I think you could draw conclusions based on what you see that are pretty... I mean, just having basic levels of empathy would bring you to, and I kind of had that confirmed by reading online after, like I said, whenever I got to the point where I got stuck and just needed help, I started looking at people's reactions to the games and interpretations, and was just yeah, I mean, I feel these, the game does a very good job of evoking them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we can all agree, you and I and most everyone that plays this, is that the theme of isolation is very much at the forefront of this game. Nothing shows that more than just the beginning of the game. When you wake up in this tiny apartment, you cannot leave. Now, whether you can't leave or don't want to leave, that's up for debate. You can decide whether you want that. There's no one else in your what we can consider to be the real world. We know that this is a Japanese game, so it invokes all of that. What we know of the real world, where Japanese Japanese apartments, very small, very isolated, very atomized, and it seems that the only escape that our main character Madatsuki has is in her dream world. Now, when she's actually in the dream world, again, there are NPCs, there are things that you can interact, but a lot of the game, you're just wandering around by yourself. There's no one around. And then when you do kind of see other things, you meet other people, they're not really interactable. They stay, they don't really do anything with you, so, and especially if you get lost in one of these looping worlds, it's very isolating, and it really makes you feel that way. Did you pick up on that when you were playing?
Yeah, and I kind of think back to what you were saying a little bit earlier in the podcast about how when you try to leave the apartment in the real world, I guess in the waking world, she shakes her head no, saying no, she doesn't want to go out. And I take the pretty direct interpretation, and I say interpretation, what I say is not fact, it's just how I feel about the game. I do feel that she just didn't want to go out, and she instead went to her bed, which I think in kind of coupled with isolation, there's definitely themes of depression in there as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the need to just go lay down in your bed and sleep rather than engage socially outside. I mean, I think that's very indicative of depression. Mm-hmm. And isolation is definitely there's an area that I didn't find a little bit until later, where after getting some instruction, you kind of come up on what looks like a picnic. I don't know if you know what you're familiar. I don't know if you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about? So, just as background, there isn't really dying in the game, but there are characters that can chase you, and if they catch you, they can actually kind of send you to an area of the map that's very weird, and you cannot leave unless you pinch your cheek and wake up from the dream. Are you talking about the one part where through a barrier you can see these creatures having a picnic?
Yes. So the inability, and like if we're interpreting all of the stuff that she's seeing as dreams, but her inability to engage with them and go like, have the picnic with them, I really like the idea that's just like another symptom of like the isolation that she was feeling. It's just like I don't want to engage with people, maybe because I feel like I can't engage with people.
Yeah. On that note, I think of the mall area. Did you get to the part that's, pretty much like clearly a mall with like an escalator?
Yes.
And there are those people who walk around and they're very like, they're clearly supposed to be humans, but they're drawn in a very weird style. And if you interact with them, they react very poorly, or it's almost like they skitter away in fear of, talking to you. It's not a good reaction, whatever it is. Yeah, that definitely solidified for me that, this person is feeling a lot of loneliness, isolation, depression. I think is very much like at the forefront of here. I think anyone who kind of knows anything about depression knows that it's very common to just sleep. That's just like the one thing you can make yourself do to kind of, get over the depressed feeling. So I think that's a very apt way of looking at this game.
Yeah, and like there's also that element of like social anxiety as well. Like I see that in both the I can't interact with these people, and also these people skitter away from me in fear whenever I try to approach them, or at least I perceive things that way. Yeah, it kind of smacks as someone who is very much a shut-in, and
Right. And as we talked about the effects, there are about 24, 25 of them, and some of them are kind of just random, like a hat and scarf, umbrella. But then there are some weird ones like Snow Woman, Yukiona. There's the one that turns you into a demon. There's a stoplight, one that turns you into a cat, that kind of stuff. But I think that's reasonable to kind of think of some of the things that you see in the dream world as being kind of repressed memories or something like that. And the one effect that really makes me think about this is the kitchen knife. Did you find the knife?
Yeah, I did. You can like stab things with it, which is an obvious thing, but it's really the only thing that allows you to like damage NPCs in the game.
Right. Yeah, and they don't like attack you back or anything. You literally just stab them with a knife; they die. And some of them give you money, which is interesting. But the knife especially kind of makes me think of maybe some repressed like urges that she has. All of us kind of feel anger, in the back of our minds. I'm sure some of us have, felt angry enough that we felt we wanted to like punch a wall or something like that. And I could definitely see the kitchen knife being, like a repressed feeling of wanting to be like physically violent with the world when, things don't go your way or you're just unhappy. It's more up to interpretation for all the other ones, but I think that a lot of those could probably be interpreted as being aspects of like her feelings or things that happened to her in the past that are just kind of residing in her subconscious and that are only accessible, when she sleeps and dreams.
Yeah, something else that like I thought about too with the knife was that like I thought it was also maybe like a representation of anger or something like that, but then there was just like no reaction from the NPCs, which made me like kind of think a little bit, because that's intentional, right?
Oh,
I mean, like
yeah.
Like that made me think that maybe it's not like it's a violent act that she's doing, but like in video games we interact with violence the most, and this is maybe like stretching a little bit, but this is just kind of something I kept circling it back around on. Maybe she feels like as part of that that like kind of speaks to our base engagement as gamers, which is to attack something. You want to see what happens. It seemed more like her like base, like I'm going to attack this thing. This is how I'm going to get a result. Like maybe she just like another like byproduct of her inability to interact properly. Like maybe it wasn't supposed to be a direct representation of her wishing to do like to commit a violent act, but more just like, I don't know what to do. This is what I know. Here we go.
Yeah, that's actually a great interpretation. Not something that I've seen other people say. So, if you're going to have like any sort of interpretation, this is the game where like any interpretation you have has at least a little bit of merit to it. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it. I hadn't thought of that at all.
Yeah, I just it was one of those things. I wouldn't have thought about it if the NPCs didn't like flee when you did that or not engage. If it had been like, you know, turned into a fight or something like that, or they fought back, I think I would have felt differently about it. I think I would have felt more in the camp of what you're saying, because it's more like I feel like I need to retaliate, where this was more like I need to interact, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting, especially since I would say that, you know, some parts of this game are just like commentaries on video games. I don't know if you got to the point that where the style really changed and it was almost like you were inside Earthbound. Do you know what part I'm talking about?
My dude, there is so much of this that's like Earthbound. Mostly just like a lot of like moving background textures and stuff, and like a lot of the trippy enemies, like the little ghost dudes that would get attached to your head while you walked around. Mm-hmm. This game is this is like, that was actually one of the first comparisons that came to mind, is it had the sensibilities of Earthbound.
Sure, yeah.
But go ahead with your point. Sorry.
There is a part of the game that very specifically the style and tone, like even the menus, change to more accurately reflect like a, you know, old school SNES RPG. And Mother's the one I keep coming back to. Like, it's very clearly supposed to be like you went from the Dream Diary world to basically an RPG.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that. So, you know, there's definitely that kind of commentary on video gaming in there somewhere, ripe for interpretation. So I think it's really cool that you're drilling down on that.
Yeah. And I will say again that I think that I think I did like this game overall, and I'm not bringing this conversation to a close. Mostly it's just because the ways in which it did convey these themes, I did think was interesting. Like when you got to the parts, when you got past the frustration of like navigating the world and finding where you were supposed to interact, I did find the interactions interesting. And they did make me think. And I think that that's a big achievement.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is probably a good place to kind of wrap up the main discussion here. Yeah, there is a lot to see and a lot to do if you have the patience to get through, you know, the brick walls of not knowing what to do, getting stuck in looped rooms, and, you know, willing to put in the work to figure out what's there. So with that said, well, let me just ask you, like, overall, did you like this game? Like, would you recommend this to another person?
So I fall in the camp of like, I liked this game for my own devices, but I don't think I could recommend it to someone else unless they were very specifically in the camp that I knew would like this. I would have to know someone's taste very well before I would recommend this game to them, because I do think that it would be frustrating for the mainstream.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would have to make sure that it was somebody who was more willing to put up with artistic frivolities. That's a bad way to put it, but you know what I mean. Like, is willing to get through the artistic parts to kind of get to a deeper message, you know, and not somebody who is just looking to get a high score in a video game, or like figure out what's going on. You know, someone who is willing to enjoy being bewildered.
Yeah, you got to be willing to smell those wine glass farts.
Well, I've got some quick hits if you want to get into those.
Yeah, hit me, baby, one more time.
Yeah, and you know, you just hit on something excuse me. You just hit on something like this. So I want to start out with this one. What is the weirdest thing that you saw while you were exploring the dream world?
I'm going to go ahead and go back to the picture that I was telling you about, which is the thing I didn't see, which was just like the wide blackness. Because I swear to God, there wasn't that much of a separation between the objects. And I was swearing to myself as I was pinching myself to come out of that moment that nothing in that area had been that spread apart, and that something changed while I was doing it. I have no way of confirming that, because whenever I look up that area, there's no one else saying anything about it. But I walked around forever and could not find any objects or like any like terrain or anything like that. And I don't know if the game glitched or if I did something to activate like that specific scenario happening. But that was by far the weirdest thing that occurred to me in that game. It was just like, what happened to everything? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that I definitely see that being kind of frustrating, especially when you see such weird things and then to go and just see nothing forever. Yeah, I could definitely see that being weird or unsettling.
Yeah, unsettling is the right word for it, because the music was still playing. It was very like, oh man, this is like, this character is about to die or something. It was very nebulous.
Right. I would say for mine, I don't know if you got to this. I know you you said you saw the picnic that the one characters were having. This happens in that same area, but you can eventually find a staircase in that world, and you go up it, and it like goes for a long time. Did you find that staircase?
The staircase boss, yes.
Yeah, the ladder from Metal Gear Solid 3, of course. But it takes a while to go up that, and I from what I've read, what happens there is it's a random event. It only happens in one of every like 64 times that you go up and down that ladder. But while you're going up, you see like a green horizon in the background, and apparently every now, like one in 64 chances, you'll see a little black spot that like falls and like swims around, and it looks like a man that's free falling through the air, and it'll never hit the ground. It just keeps falling and falling and falling and swirling around like it's a person kind of flailing. And it was very unsettling for me to see that. And I'm actually really glad that I apparently was one of the lucky few to see that on the first time you go up those steps.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also very unsettling. My God.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't write this down, but was there a coolest thing that you saw?
I don't know that I could say cool, but did you make it to the ending of this game, Will?
No. The time of me playing it from exhorting it to you to now was the farthest I've ever like naturally gotten into the game, even though I was help using instructions, but I was never able to like put in the work to find those extra effects to get to the ending. But I do know of the ending and what it is.
Okay, I don't know how much I want to spoil it here, but I'll say I really liked the ending as dark as it is. I think that... go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's leave it ambiguous. Like that is...
I am.
That is the one thing that like can be spoiled about this, and I kind of just want to leave that as it is. I don't think we really need to have a discussion about that, but continue with your thought.
Yeah, no, I agree that I think it should be left up to interpretation, because I think people who are going to take the time to play this deserve the payoff of the ending. Because I do think it has real payoff, mostly just because it kind of capitalizes on a lot of the themes that you explore in the game. And I liked seeing it come to an also equally interpretable conclusion.
Sure.
Very much something that you think should be definitive, but you don't know. And the game leaves it that way, and I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, now that you're thinking about it, or now that I'm thinking about it, I think the spaceship was pretty cool. And how you get to the spaceship was really cool. That's all I'll say about it. But yeah, I like that. Out of all the effects, which one did you like enjoy? Which one like brought you like that you thought was the coolest or something like that?
It's not the coolest, but it's the one I thought was the funniest, mostly just because of how it was, I guess how the art was done for it, but going blonde.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it looks like you're wearing like a sack over your head, because you can still kind of see your brown bangs at the front. Mm-hmm. Just the look of it was really goofy and funny to me. But also its interactions were also like probably the most silliest, but I don't know. That was my favorite. What was yours?
Yeah, and that's another one where, like the fact that the effect is just that she has long blonde hair, I think is definitely something that you can interpret about her character, that's something that you find and can become in your dream world. For me, my favorite effect was the flute. And like the flute doesn't do anything, like it doesn't like open up any secret things or make anybody do anything different, but you could just play the flute as you're walking around. So you're in a really like weird, surreal, almost terrifying place, and you just slam the number one button, and you're just fluting out a cute tune that's actually pretty fun to listen to while you're hopelessly lost. I got a lot of joy out of doing that.
I think one other. I'm gonna give another shout out to Towel.
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar with Towel?
As someone who has napped before in their life, yes.
As far as I know, it doesn't have any uses, but the bundled up like I'm gonna take me a nap like vibe is definitely what I got from that. And I love that one.
Sure, yeah. But to bring it back to the real world, I don't know if you're someone that dreams a lot or like remembers your dreams, but have you ever had like a dream that was just like super vivid and like you'll remember for the rest of your life? Do you have any like dream that you could share with us?
I don't remember a lot of dreams. There was the one dream that I can remember from, like, I don't dream a lot now. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, and I typically, and I don't sleep for very long hours right now. So I just don't remember the dreams from the night before. But one I do remember from whenever I was a kid was one about some wolves that had made it into our house, and I was hiding out in the bathroom. And I remember thinking to myself in the dream how convenient it was that I got the room with the toilet. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm kind of like you these days. Like I dream, but I don't remember them. Like it's more like I wake up and I know I had a dream, but I have absolutely no idea what it is. I do have the memory of when I was a kid where I was like, you know those like movies and TV shows where people in the jungle will like swing on the vines. I have a very vivid memory of swinging on the vine, but below me wasn't like a jungle floor. It was my house. And then there were like zombies or something that was like crawling around that was going to hurt me if they got me. But that's all I remember of it. So
we're dudes. We think about like action stuff. We have very smooth, ovular brains.
Yeah. I've said it over and over on this podcast. I got raw chicken brain. We're all just gonna have to be okay with that. But that was my exhortation. Thank you for joining me on this. I was actually kind of worried that this might not be that good of discussion, but I think we had some really good philosophical discussion about this game, and I hope that this was an enjoyable one for you.
Yeah, and I think I liked the approach we took to it as well. Like for the people who may have been listening to this before we recorded this podcast, we were talking about how it was going to probably break the mold in terms of our usual structure, and I think it's good. I think I like the more general discussion about art that we had, as pretentious and as much as we were sniffing each other's butts as it got.
Regardless of how smooth our brains are, we can at least pretend to have some ridges.
Yeah, we've been reading off of a script this entire time for much more intelligent people, our girlfriends.
Absolutely. But I am ready for your exhortation.
Okay, Will, I'm breaking the rules.
Oh, please do. Break me, Daddy.
I am exhorting you to exhort me to play Resident Evil 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know you have played this game already.
Oh, Resident Evil 7. Okay.
As far as I know, you like Resident Evil 7 a lot, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, yeah, now is like the time to be excited about Resident Evil.
I'm getting to that. Answer my question,
I was just leaving it at that. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I played 7, and I did really like it. Yeah.
Okay, so I have owned 7 for a little bit and haven't played too much of it because it's super spooky, and I recognize its quality, but I need to get through to the end. Because in a few months, there is a 9'6" goth vampire mom, I believe, that is going to be one of the main antagonists in the next Resident Evil. Mm-hmm. And jokes aside, she's not the only reason why I'm anticipating this. It's going like full like Werewolves in London / Transylvania, like very very Bloodborne vibes in the next Resident Evil 8 Village. I am very much into what it's putting down, and I want to play 7 to get set up for it. And I thought, who better to talk about 7 with, other than my girlfriend, who will be playing it with me, than Will, who already enjoys it.
Yeah, right, exactly. In terms of 8, I'm super excited for it. Look, we all want to boink the giant lady. We don't need to talk about that. We can just leave that there. But anyway, I'm very excited for it. And I think you're absolutely right. I do think you're going to benefit from playing 7 before you get into 8. So I really like the game. I have a lot to say about it. I'm looking forward to playing through it again. I think this is a great exhortation.
Yeah, and just to kind of like throw a little bit more on this, I do have a passive Resident Evil. I have played 4, 5, and most of 6. I did not play any of the original 3 and have never played any of the original 3.
Wow.
So I'm coming from, I am showing up to the table as a more like probably more of like the Zoomer equivalent of a Resident Evil fan.
That's very interesting. I've played all of the originals. I did play 5 once. Didn't really care for 5. I skipped 6 and then got back into it with 7. But I also haven't really played any of the weird spin-offs. So like Operation Raccoon City. That there's Revelations. There's a couple here and there. I haven't played those. So only the mainstream games. But I think that 7's a good place. If you're going to like get back into Resident Evil, I think 7's a good place to do it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do this and have the discussion with you. So I look forward to next episode when we talk about it.
Yeah, sounds good. I can't wait.
All right, well, let's get into some back matter. Will, what have you had going on? What's been rustling your jimmies? I don't think that's the right term for this, but it's the one I'm using.
Right. Yeah, well, I've talked about this on another podcast, but I'm pretty busy these days. I got school, learning all about computer science and business communication, that kind of stuff. But Kaldheim just released on Magic Arena, and I finally got time to go in and open my packs. And oh boy, Infect is back, baby! You can hear me talk about this on the Gut Shot podcast, but all I'm doing in Magic Arena now is just killing people with poison counters with my boy Finn.
You absolute monster.
It's disgusting.
That's
yes.
disgusting. Yeah, it's horrible.
There's a lot of other things to be excited about in Kaldheim, but right now I'm still just trying to get my fix of my low to the ground Golgari Lurrus deck, where it's just chock full of small death touch creatures, ways to get Finn into play, and then ways to recur my 1/1s who keep dying. It's a very Jordan deck, I gotta say.
Yeah, you showed me the deck list, and I'm extremely excited to play it whenever I eventually get around to hopping back on Arena. Mm-hmm. I have been basically I've talked about this a few times. I've been transitioning into a new job recently, and it's taken a lot of my brain power away from me and my ability to think. I am exhausted every day whenever I get off work. Mm-hmm. And I've just been turning to comfort foods. And Magic, while it is one of my comfort foods, it's a little bit too far into the realm of thinking than I want to do right now. But I will say I'm excited for Kaldheim.
Magic is something that you kind of need to be into to enjoy it 100%. It's not something you can log into and just play an hour or so. You need to get up to speed. You have to catch up on what's happened in Magic to really kind of experience it 100%. So I totally understand your feelings there.
Yeah, and I will say I miss it a lot. It is one of my favorite games to play, just kind of casually. I have my opinion on it has been kind of low lately. I mean, as I feel like, which is understandable, what with some of the rough patches we've had with it in the last year or so, 2 years really. Mm-hmm. But I am very thrilled to hear that there's a new set that they released that's good, and that the limited, from what I hear, is actually pretty good as well. I'm very excited to check all of it out.
Sure. What video games have you been playing?
None. I've been playing Dark Souls 3, which I guess technically it's been new for me. I had never played through the DLC before, so it was fine. I have played through Dark Souls 3 multiple times and beaten it to completion multiple times. And but I was finally like, you know what, I'm gonna check this DLC out. I don't even know why I was waiting on it. I'm gonna hop back into it and finally play through it. And it was, both DLC packs were incredible. Having high expectations for the series. There are some of the highest cinematic high points that I've seen in really out of any From Software's games. And I'm gonna say this now. Dark Eater Midir is a boss in the second DLC, the Ring City. It has one of the most incredible OSTs out there. I'm gonna link it in the episode so that people can listen to it or whatever if they feel like they want to. But I love that track so much, and it was an awesome boss fight.
Sure. So is this this is a boss in the game, correct?
Yes, it's a dragon who has been infected by blight. Basically, he was a protector of man and gods alike, and this dragon swore a vow to protect, to basically fight an endless battle against this blight, and it eventually lost and fell to it. And you're going to put it out of its misery, basically. And the music is very reflective of that act, and it's so good.
But can this boss beat my number one favorite Dark Souls character, Maneater Mildred?
Probably not. Maneater Mildred uses poison.
Hashtag Sack Club.
Yeah, well, Bikini Sack Club. Outside of that, also Sekiro Shadows Die Twice went on sale today. I am finally going to play through that game. I picked it up on sale. I'm going to, once I finish my New Game Plus run of Dark Souls 3, I'm going to hop into Sekiro and get the crap kicked out of me all over again. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Sounds like you got a lot on your plate. Please give us updates on your progress in Sekiro.
I shall. But I guess for that, you want to button this up, Will?
Yeah, let's button this one up. I've waxed poetic as much as I can.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Disc Dandies. You can follow Will on Twitter at AgroRhetoric and myself at Action Pancake. We would love it if you would follow along with our exhortations and stay up to date on all the latest Disc Dandies excitement at Disc Dandies Pod. Join us here next episode for another spin of the Disc Dandies.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel or I'll stab you.
We need the views. Feed our children.
Later, everyone. All right, so back to my story. As I was saying, so I was just stabbing my knife just into this thing over and over again, just real slamming on it. I actually kind of lost focus and forgot what I was doing there for a second. I was just so into just putting all my might into stabbing this thing. So anyway, that was the best day of my life.
Just having an outlet for your rage. Oh! I know what it was. You were looking at more Uro decks in Modern, huh?
I'm just saying that if you're going to play an Uro pile, just put in the extra work to make sure your deck actually has a theme and something that it's trying to do. Don't just put the best cards in Sultai into a deck and call it a deck. It's no good.
Just what I'm saying is, if you're allowed to bring Uro to F&M, I should be allowed to bring a knife.